Commission Citizen Advisory Committee for the City of Lowell for our regular meeting of Monday, May 14th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sue, roll call, please.
Commissioner Breimeyer? Here. Commissioner Cadwalder?
Here.
Commissioner Chambers?
Here.
Commissioner Ellis?
Here.
Commissioner Plank?
Here.
Commissioner Schraben? Here. And Chair Barker?
Here. Thank you, Sue. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Motion for approval. I would like to make a motion that we move the public hearing, move that up between 4 and 5.
Any discussion beyond that? You want to second that, Dave? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is corrected and approved. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting from April 9th, our regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
And a second?
I'll second.
And discussion. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written then, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. We stand approved. Thank you. Is there any public comments or communications concerning items not on the agenda? And Sue, do you want to read those emails in at this point?
No, I'll read those in once we...
Once we start the, okay. Anything from the public that anybody would like to speak ahead of time? Or you certainly will be allowed the chance in discussion too, so. Okay. Then having said that, I'd like to open the public hearing on John Barr's short-term rental special land use at 2179 G Drive. Is John here? John, would you please come on up and just, in your own words, tell us what you want to do, basically.
Sure. So I travel quite extensively for work, so I want to rent my house out when I'm not home. Pretty much that simple. Is there anything else specifically you want me to talk about?
No, that's your, you get the few minutes here to express what you want to do.
Sure.
Okay.
No, I just want to rent my house out. I did in the past. I haven't lately. I've let other people stay there for no cost or anything. Family, friends, friends of people at work, that type of thing, just because I got a letter from you guys saying that I couldn't rent it out anymore, so I haven't. My brother stayed there for a couple weeks when he was in town. I've been involved with a project for work in Ohio for a while now, and I've spent a pretty extensive amount of time there, and in the last week I've been in 3 different states. I travel a lot. That's not forever. It's it's in the year plan to probably stop as soon as what I can. Maybe 2 years, I don't know at this point, but I put a lot of money into that house, and renting it out is helping me or the plan is that it helps me recoup some of that big investment I made into that house.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Andy, do you want to run through the submittal and bring us up to date on everything, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you recall, and for Kelly, I know that this is a little new to you, so we'll kind of provide a little bit of background here just to get everybody up to speed. Quite a while ago, probably a year or so ago, something like that, the city, I believe, received a complaint about a short-term rental on Mr. Barr's property. This is an issue. Short-term rentals are an issue that's pretty popular in planning and zoning right now in Michigan specifically, and the city hadn't really addressed short-term rentals in any capacity, in any direction. So because it's not listed, it's not permitted anywhere, therefore it is prohibited in the city, or it was. After that, the City Council and Planning Commission discussed it and decided that this is something that could be permitted and should be regulated as a special land use in the zoning ordinance. With that direction, and the Planning Commission drafted and ultimately approved, and the City Council also approved a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that would allow for special land uses that would allow for short-term rentals as a special land use, and then also listed off a whole bunch of regulations that would apply specifically to any short-term rental that was proposed thereafter. Shortly after the amendment was approved and published and became official, Mr. Barr submitted his application for a short-term rental. This was in March. He was not present at the April Planning Commission meeting last month, and so you guys decided that because he was not there, that we should just, it should just be tabled for a month, allow the applicant the ability to, address some of the concerns, present what he wants to do, and then you guys can make a more informed decision at a subsequent meeting. So that meeting can be tonight, or it can be a subsequent meeting, depending on what you hear and how the discussion goes, and whether or not you feel like all of the standards and all of the regulations have been satisfied. Mr. Chair, do you want me to walk through each of the review standards at this point, or do you want to wait until public comment? How do you want to address that?
Let's walk through the review standards, and then I think we'll take a break at that point and hear some comments. I think that, and Sue, at that point, I guess, let's remind me, please.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So within the zoning ordinance, there are several, 6 specifically, there are 6 general standards that apply to all special land uses. So within this district, which is the SR, Suburban Residential District, and every other zoning district in the city, there are a list of things that are permitted as uses by right. In other words, you can just do them with site plan approval. And then there is an additional list of uses that are permitted only with special land use approval from the Planning Commission. And that is a little bit higher bar to meet, and it's more of a discretionary decision by the Planning Commission as to whether or not it should be permitted. And so as you evaluate special land use decisions, there are these 6 standards within the ordinance that are intended to help guide you towards making that decision. So if you find that each of the 6 standards are all satisfied, then you should probably approve the special land use, and you can of course include conditions of approval if you're so inclined. If you find that one or more of them is not satisfied, then you can certainly deny the application, and it's important to state your reasons why you would deny it. What standards are not satisfied, how they are not satisfied, and things like that, so it's clear why you're making a decision. You don't want your decisions to be arbitrary. They should be based on the standards and the facts of the case, and the standards of the zoning ordinance and the regulations and things like that. So with that in mind, I'm just going to read the standard here and kind of summarize some of the observations we have on this application, and then Mr. Chair, do you want the commission to each discuss these one at a time as we go?
I think so. I think that would be the appropriate thing. And then at the end of it, again, we'll interject public comment unless we need a specific.
Okay, sure. So the first standard just says that the special land use shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the essential character of the area in which it is proposed. I wrote in here that the applicant, as we know, resides at the property for a part of the year, and estimated that it would be used as a short-term rental for about a third of the year. In my opinion, and I wrote this in here, that the use of the property as a short-term rental, if it were operated in compliance with the zoning ordinance, would be substantially similar to its customary use as a single-family residence. It's still being occupied by residents for residential purposes. Now, they're not full-time, year-round type of residence, but it's still a residential purpose. And then I wrote, further, the applicant has proposed a privacy fence on the property to provide further screening from neighboring properties, particularly to the north.
And I have a question on that. I'm assuming everybody does, but when we got our packet, it shows the area here that would be a privacy fence, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at here. it appears as though it's all around the entire property. Is that correct?
It looked that way, and we can certainly ask the applicant to clarify what.
Please come on up and
Sure.
tell us.
The privacy fence goes from the corner of the house to the pool house. As to block noise from traveling down the hill towards the neighbors to the north.
Okay, because it doesn't show it on your piece here, I don't.
Oh, I see. They contacted me about a year ago and said that it had been noisy. And after discussions with them, we decided putting up a privacy fence would be the best solution for abating the noise.
Is the privacy fence already up?
Yes, absolutely.
So is it behind the pool on the north side?
Can I walk over there?
Sure, yeah.
The pool's right here,
Yeah.
and the fence goes from the corner of the house right there to the pool house, which is right there. So it goes past the pool.
As long as
Yes. It's kind of hard to see on that dark picture,
Sure.
but yeah.
Commissioners, if you're looking at your packet on the left-hand side of the pool, if you're looking at it from the corner of the house, it goes to the top left-hand side of the pool. So it's a relatively short fence. Okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so that's what you're considering as being added on to the privacy fence, okay. Do you want to go on to number 2, or do you want us to take a vote on it at this point?
Well, before we take a vote on things, I think it'd be helpful to allow for the public comment
Okay.
before all that, so you have, and then I want you guys to have all the information
Okay.
from everybody, and then you can decide, one, if it's satisfied, and then 2, if additional conditions need to be placed on an approval, you can do that. If you decide that you don't want to approve it, you can do that too.
How about if we go through all 6 standards and then do the public input?
The second standard is
I
that.
had a question about the
Yeah.
Richmond, yeah.
Yeah.
Just if I was a neighbor, I'd be curious if, if I had someone living there who I didn't know and the owner was gone, so is there a plan in place for, in terms of like yard maintenance and stuff like that, so that if whoever's living there doesn't own it, doesn't really feel like it's their responsibility to keep the lawn from growing a foot?
Do you want me to answer that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think it's yours to stay up here.
Okay. I pay a lawn mowing service to come every week and mow the lawn.
Okay. Okay. And,
Maybe not yet. I think they start this week, if I remember right.
Probably about right.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it's the same issue with trash, I would assume, and
Mhm.
all the other things. And that's part of the conditions and part of the
Absolutely.
the new
Yeah,
ordinance.
there's a trash service that picks up the trash every week.
Yeah, and that's also part of the new ordinance that they have to have certain,
Is
amenities.
the trash being picked up at the road or up at the house?
It's at the road. The lady that takes care of the house when I'm gone, what's the word in the ordinance?
No, like a local agent.
Local agent,
Something
the
like
local
that.
agent, a friend of mine, she lives just down the road. She comes every week and brings the trash out.
Okay.
Okay. And you have to have that local agent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on? Okay.
The second standard is that the proposed special land use shall be generally consistent with the City of Lowell master plan. Within the master plan, the subject properties within the low-density future land use designation, low-density residential, generally that's characterized by homes, usually single-family homes on lots of half-acre or larger. In this case, the short-term rentals is located on about an acre and a half. Again, overall, if we're going to consider this a residential use of property in some capacity, it's, again, generally compatible with the master plan, in my opinion.
Okay, commissioners, any comments on this second standard? Okay. And remember, we will call on the public here, so, okay.
Item 3, the special land use shall be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police, fire protection, drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewage facilities. So far as I can tell, and certainly, police and fire department approval, or at least review and notification is something that I think the ordinance requires for special land uses. Site plan is kind of a matter of just process. The fire department sees the site plans and the special land use decisions that the planning commission makes. In our view, the use would be adequately served by all of those things, based on what Mr. Barr is telling us about trash disposal and maintenance and things like that. And I think as far as the public side of it, the streets, fire, police, all that seems to be adequate in that area as well.
Even with increased occupancies at certain times and things of that nature, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions at all on standard 3? Okay, let's go to 4 then.
Number 4, the special land use shall not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities or services. Again, the intent of this is that it's looking at if the special land use might overburden public services, so police, fire, water, sewer, any of that stuff. If there might be such a drain on those local services due to this one activity, then that's something that we would certainly take a much closer look at. Again, in this case, this is certainly a quasi-residential use. There's people living here. We're not going to see, hundreds of or thousands of cars a day. There's not a need for huge parking lots. There's not, a need for a huge amount of output into the city sewer system. There's not going to be a tremendous use of water that's far above and beyond what would ordinarily be expected in a residence. In some instances, yeah, there would be more people there than would be normal. But again, in my opinion, it does not rise to the level of something that we would consider excessive additional requirements at public cost.
Any questions on 4, on the 4th standard? Okay, number 5.
Number 5, the special land use shall not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, and equipment or conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any persons, property, or the general welfare by any reason or by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. Again, if operated in a manner consistent with the zoning regulations, I think that standard would be satisfied. As we heard at the previous meeting, that seems to be a debatable point now, listening to some of the neighbors from the previous meeting, so that's something to talk about. Again, assuming that this is true also assumes that it would be operated in a way that the zoning ordinance requires it to be, which means, noise that's not out of character with a single family residence. That's kind of the intent of the zoning provisions, is that the short-term rental would be basically invisible as far as what you can tell is going on from neighboring properties. If there are no further comments on that one, number 6, the proposed special land use shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements. Now, copies of all applicable permits shall be submitted to city. If approved, that would be addressed as a condition of approval. It's something that obviously anyone has to comply with all state and federal rules anyways. At this point, to my knowledge, there are not additional state and federal rules that deal with home occupation or short-term rentals, I'm sorry. And he would certainly have to abide by all city ordinances, including zoning and noise and anything else.
Andy, with that noise then, would that fall under like the curb, like what we have here in the city here?
Yeah.
Where at 9 o'clock it's...
Yeah, I mean, the city's noise ordinance applies to everybody, and this wouldn't supersede that.
Before we start the public comment, thanks, Andy. We went through all of them, right?
Yes.
Before we have public comment on the standards, so would you please, you've got some emails to read in?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
We are opposed to Rat Bar's application for a special land use permit at 2179 G Drive, which would allow him to operate this house as a short-term rental. Terry and Jerry Abel, 2450 G Drive. Dear Planning Commissioners, I am writing to urge you to reject Mr. Rat Bar's request for a special land use permit at 2179 G Drive. It has recently come to my attention that Mr. Barr has been operating a short-term rental property at 2179 G Drive through the websites of Airbnb and VRBO since April of 2017. In addition, it has also been brought to my attention that in the past there have been numerous noise complaints and other nuisances that have been reported. I believe that issuing a special use permit would go against the spirit of the suburban residential district. As stated, the purpose of this district is to foster an open space character of the lands within this district, minimizing public service costs, limiting urban influence, and preserving natural features. Allowing this kind of environment will increase public costs due to police contact from various noise complaints that this type of business attracts. In addition, creating a party atmosphere is a direct contradiction of limiting urban influence. Short-term guests do not have the same respect for neighbors as a full-time resident, and therefore do not care if their loud behavior is disruptive to residents who have moved to this area to escape the urban patterns. While the websites state that 10 guests are allowed, numerous reviews on both websites have shown that Mr. Barr does not enforce this policy. In fact, one review on the VRBO site indicates that in April 2017, the property was leased to 20 roller derby teammates. Directly from the website, it states, we were a team of 20 roller derby players from Maine. We loved the home. It had plenty of room for all of us to gather together and hang out and relax and enjoy each other before our bouts. The amenities were top-notch. The hot tub was perfect for after a hard day, and it was easy to get to the airport. It was plenty of outside decks to sit around and relax too. Kitchen was big and had the dishes, cooking utensils anyone would want for a meal prep. It is also about 2 minutes from a great grocery store that has everything you could need. Lots of sidewalks for getting out of the community if you wanted to run, etc. Felt like a safe neighborhood. In July of 2017, an extended family of 20 stayed at the single-family residence. We had a wonderful, relaxing, long weekend at this house. The property was tidy and neat and had all of the things we needed for a family getaway, including a high chair and a pack and play. We are a large, extended family of 20, including 3 toddlers. Staying here and there was room for everyone. The pool was the best part. We made full of both the charcoal and gas grills as well as the fire pit for s'mores. The Meijer is super close, which made going on food and drink runs quick and easy. Thanks, Rob and team, for hosting our crazy family. We had a blast. Allowing this many individuals to reside in this house has occurred on several occasions, and it can be quite disruptive for families nearby. I understand that an owner of a single-family house can have occasional guests over to visit. However, this house is being marketed for and has the potential to have multiple families every week. A single-family house that constantly hosts multiple families at a time on a weekly basis, in essence, turns this house into a multi-family building. This is also not allowed in the suburban residential district. In summary, I believe that allowing a special use permit at 2179 G Drive would have negative consequences for the neighbors of this parcel. I urge you to vote no on a special use permit allowing a short-term rental business at 2179 G Drive. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Tony Beers, 1751 G Drive. I live next door to the proposed Airbnb and opposed to the special land use permit. The owner has been non-compliant for the past year as he has been operating on a regular basis. Dawn Pooler, and she doesn't give her address. I talked to John and Rob Barr last year about the noise and profanity coming from their rental. They agreed to install a privacy fence to help with the visual and noise from the constant parties. My family is the closest to this rental, and over the years, it has gotten way out of control. We cannot go into the backyard, seriously. The noise, the music, the profanity, it's all day and all night, and our daughter walks to the school bus in front of this rental every morning. We have no idea who these people are. It's extremely unsettling. We pay taxes and we have rights. Please shut Please help us shut this down now. It's extremely unfair to the Lowell Police Department to have to deal with this issue. I've yet to call for a noise complaint. Seems like a waste of time for the officers. The G Drive neighbors are getting all on board to deal with this issue, and I hope our voices are heard. Thanks, Tim Bruce. This one is from Rick and Mary Onan of 2836 G Drive. Oppose Mr. Barr's application for a special land use permit. We would like to keep our neighborhood quiet and safe. We have already noticed a lot of activity at 2179 G Drive, and summer hasn't even begun. That being said, we are against the short-term rental in our neighborhood. Rick and Mary Onan. I am writing concerning the short-term rental request at 2179 G Drive. I do not think this should be allowed in a residential area in Lowell. We live at 2177 G Drive in back of this house. We have lived here in Lowell for 30 years, and during that time, 2 different families have lived there. They were good neighbors. Last summer, most every week, when I walked down our driveway, there were different people living in the house. There were many cars there, and 1 week, in addition to the cars, a travel trailer parked in the yard. There's often a lot of noise at the house due to the pool, hot tub, and fire pit. Loose dogs come after my dog when we are walking down the driveway. When I met Mr. and Mrs. Barr last spring in the driveway, one day they told me that they would be living in that house. They never mentioned that it would be a rental property. Recently, I noticed on the HomeAway website, they advertise that the home has a large children's play area in the backyard. The picture shows children playing in the yard. That is our property. I ask that you please vote against this type of housing in Lowell. Thank you, Mary Olis. And the last one is, my husband Randy and I are very concerned with the possibility of the home at 2179 G Drive being approved for continued use of a vacation rental. We have been residents of Lowell for many years, and for the past 20 live across the street from 2179 G Drive. We are concerned with the continued use of this residential home as a rental for very large parties. As you may be aware, it is listed as having accommodations for up to 20 people. Living across the street, I can testify to large parties spending several nights at a time, the volume of vehicles parked in the driveway, traffic to and from the home, trash and loud music, and at least one occasional escalating fights. Now, what you expect in your neighborhood, not what you expect in your neighborhood, nor do we want a continued stream of unknown people in and out on a daily basis. Mr. Barr is raking in a large sum of money without consideration of the neighborhood or our village, as he resides in Minnesota. Thank you, Carolyn and Randolph Hall.
Thank you, Sue. Mr. Barr, if you want to have a seat, we're going to open it up to the general public. Is there somebody in the general public that would like to speak, sir? Please give us your name and address.
Herb Vanderbilt. I live at 2204 G Drive. I'm your neighbor across the street. Part of my experience is that I served for 17 years on Lowell Township, and for 10 of those years I served on the Planning Commission, so I sat where you sat. And when you serve on the Planning Commission in a rural area, like Lowell Township, you often have people coming into the township with expectations of where they are. For instance, we had a guy that built a house on the corner of a 40-acre lot. He put a very nice home in there, and a couple weeks later started complaining that the neighbor was raising pigs and it stunk. Well, our answer to him was, you moved into a rural area. This pig farm has been here for 40 years. So there are certain expectations of zoning. When you put your house, or you buy a house in a commercial area, and the neighbor starts selling, hot dogs, you can't complain too much about the smell because he's in a commercial area. If you have your house in an area where multi-units are allowed, and your neighbors are constantly coming and going and renting a house for a month and then leaving, you really can't complain about that because you're living in an area of more transient activity. People are moving in, they're moving out. It's multi-unit, it's expected, it's an apartment or it's a condominium. Residential zoning is a little bit different. There's some expectation for residential zoning where you don't expect commercial activity, you don't expect people to be coming and going, you don't expect someone to move, to start farming pigs. So my objection to this is, and I have nothing against Airbnbs, we're running one in a couple of weeks, is that this is commercial activity. This is unusual activity for the area that it's zoned. This is zoned residential, and when you live in a residential area, there's certain expectations about what happens in that area. And that's my objection, is that this is more commercial activity and not what I expect is from residential zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Somebody else? Sir, way in the back there?
Yes, my name is Mike Pyrock. I'm at 2146 G Drive. In fact, when you leave this gentleman's driveway, go across the road, you're into my house. Okay, so I'm the one that sees the cars coming and going and coming and going in traffic. I don't mind it as much in that there, but just for a little incident, yesterday morning at about 6:15, I got woke up from somebody playing the radio in the car. None of my neighbors have ever done that. So the only place I can think of it was coming from was from the 2179, because there was at least about 6 or 7 cars out there. But if he can have it under control, if he can have people that be responsible about the people in the residential area, I don't mind. But because there's no one to control it, I do object to it. All right, so that's what's my say.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, my name is Kent McKay, and since 1960 my family has resided at 1775 G Drive on Foreman Hill. This evening I want to briefly speak to you regarding the proposed special land use permit on the agenda. Many decades ago I was riding along with my father while he was doing house calls. While he's doing house calls, I'm in the driver's seat doing my homework, and that night it was social studies and it was modern American history. I remarked to my dad, God, wouldn't it be great, Dad, if we could predict history? In his wisdom, my dad told me that to a large degree, human history is predictable. He told me that a person, for the most part, will behave in the future as they have behaved in the past. And if you really want to see how a person lives their life, just look inside their car. Now, Mr. Barr has applied for a special land use permit to allow short-term rentals at his property. His past actions show he has willfully operated his business with no respect for the city of Lowell, its regulations, or its residents. For instance, as you know, Mr. Barr operated his rental property last year without city approval. He resumed operations this year without fulfilling ordinance requirements. As of last week, Mr. Barr not notified the fire department or the police department of the dates and number of guests for each unique stay as required. And based on what I'm seeing, I'm willing to bet that when there are cancellations and additions, he will not offer an amendment to that list. Mr. Barr, as of last week, had not provided the city with a 24-hour emergency phone number as required. And last month, Mr. Barr did not show up for the last Planning Commission meeting and did not even show the common courtesy of a simple email saying he would be unable to make the hearing. On the Airbnb website, he boasts a response time to client inquiries within 1 hour, 100% of the time. His response to government is somewhat less. Those are his past actions, which I believe predict the future. Now, if you read the description on the Airbnb website, you will discover misleading information. The title for his property says, huge estate, acreage. Well, if that house is a huge estate, then apparently Lowell is full of mansions and I'm just not aware of it. And to Mr. Barr, apparently acreage equates to 1.52 acres. The description, as previously stated on the website, says 10 guests are allowed, and yet there's a list of the 5 bedrooms and the beds in each room, which means when you add that and the air mattresses up together, all listed on the website, that the house accommodates 20 guests. The listing says that there are security cameras outside, but they pointedly remark that they do not show the swimming pool or the hot tub. So he's advertising privacy. There's a picture of the swimming pool, and in the distance are my trees and their yard. There's no picture from the other direction showing the nearby residence or a picture of the front of the house or what's across the street. Mr. Barr is selling to the party crowd. He is selling the idea of privacy, 20 guests, swimming pools, hot tubs, and new neighbors every 5 days. Is that what you would want in your neighborhood? That's what you're voting on tonight. What is the advantage of granting this special use permit? Honestly, I can't think of a single one, okay? I've thought of it and I thought there's gotta be something. I cannot find a single advantage to the city of Lowell other than we're being nice. And we are people we try very hard to be nice and to give people the benefit of the doubt. This is one time we don't need to do that. The advantage to Mr. Barr is a rental rate that ranges from $349 to $799 per night. There has been a marked increase in traffic that I can attest to. And 1 weekend ago, not this previous weekend, the weekend prior to that, I counted 10 cars on the property both Friday and Saturday nights. There has been voter activity. If you question that, just talk to the neighbors across the street. And there has been in the past, and there will be in the future, more wasted police man hours as the officers respond to increasing complaints and a new group of people every 5 days. Why on earth would Lowell welcome this to the city? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could predict history, see what's going to happen in the future? Please vote no on this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Dawn Peeler, and I live at 1775 with Kent, and we're just west of this residence. And east, I'm sorry. If Mr. Barr, if you live at that resident part of the year, I've never seen you in the neighborhood. So how is that? According to your website, you moved to Minnesota because your job took you there.
My brother lives in Minnesota.
Well, according to the website, he's the owner. If you go on and you read the information of the owner,
that's a listing on
he is the owner.
Ma'am,
So
please address those questions to
There-
the
okay.
commission. If you
there
would.
is, last weekend, or 2 weekends ago when the 10 vehicles were there, there was very loud music going on at 10 o'clock at night. I could hear people outside partying, and I couldn't figure out what the noise was. Well, it come through the woods up to our location. There's continual traffic. There was, this past weekend, there was 5 cars there, and I can't believe that it's all relatives and family and friends. If you go on the website, you'll look at all the days that are reserved already. So if it's family and friends, then she's got an awful lot of family and friends and an awful lot of traffic, vulgar language, loud music, and it's just a continuous thing every week. And it echoes right up to our place through the woods.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I have that, please.
What is this? Let me tell you. Anyway, I'd like to set this up here. I was coming up our driveway, coming back home.
Please give us your name and address. Please give us your
Robert
name and
Lowell
address.
2177G Drive.
Thank you.
And I was coming up our driveway runs next to the house in question. We're down from it, there's a hill. And I seen this can apparently came over the hill. And as you can see, I can elaborate. You can see what it was used for. And as with my picture, here. Here's a picture of they're playing in their backyard, which is our front yard. That isn't their property, and that's on their website. And that's about all I have to say. A couple more same pictures. You ready to say something? They're pretty much all covered.
My name is Mary Olis, and I live at 2177G Drive, and their property is right directly in front of our property. And another thing on his website, he says that it's also available for long-term rentals, not just short-term, but long-term also. Last year, it seems like every weekend when I would go down the driveway, my dog would be chased by another dog. I met a lot of nice people who were there. I met some people that were there for a wedding reception, and they're the ones that told me they were renting it, and they're the ones that's how I found out about it. There was also a girls' hockey team from Canada that was there. As far as the trash goes, if there's someone there for the weekend, they put the trash out and it sits there all week until Thursday till it gets picked up. So there's usually trash sitting around. So I hope you will vote against this in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Ma'am?
I'm Carol Clemens Stahl, and I live at 2429G Drive. In my observation of what I've seen and heard, the phrase short-term seems to be misused. If there's something advertised at a daily rate, or even at a weekly rate, that's excessive short-term. I go to Florida every winter, and the common practice there is no rentals less than 90 days. And whoever rents that is sure not going to sublet anything. So I'm concerned about daily, weekly rental. It's not fair to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Do we want to go through the short-term rental performance standards, the three standards there?
Can I make a couple more comments real quick, Bruce?
We'll come back. That's what I'm trying to clarify here, how we want to do this. I think maybe we ought to go through the short-term rental standards. There's three of them.
Yeah, there are several within the ordinance. There are three here that I called out specifically. One of them just states that the short-term rental must be located on a parcel that satisfies the dimensional requirements of the SR district. So in other words, the parcel has to meet the minimum size for that district. The home, the setbacks, all of that kind of stuff have to be satisfied. It does meet that standard. One of the standards that we added restricts occupancy to 2 persons per bedroom. According to the Airbnb listing, which we also checked out a while back, indicates that there's 5 beds, so that means not more than 10 guests. There is a provision in the ordinance that allows the planning commission to permit more than 10 guests, but that is only in instances when the home is located on 2 acres or more. And so since this is not on 2 acres or more, if it were approved, 10 would be the absolute maximum that you would be able to permit. And then in subsection 6, there is a parking requirement of 1 parking space per bedroom. We just made the observation that on the aerial, there's not like a clearly delineated parking lot, which is not unexpected, but it appeared that there was, room for 5 cars to park there. And at a rate of 1 space per bedroom, that's 5 spaces would be required, and it appeared that they would be able to satisfy that standard. So, you know, again, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys for discussion here. If you are inclined to approve it, I would suggest a fairly lengthy list of conditions that make sure that it's operated in a manner that's compliant with the zoning ordinance and addresses the neighbor concerns. If you are inclined to not approve it, I think you should clearly state your reasons why and which of the standards of the zoning ordinance are not satisfied from that first list of 6 that we went through.
Andy, I have a procedural question here, I guess. Since we passed the ordinance approximately a year ago, why would Mr. Bard not be, he should be in compliance with that from a year ago?
Yeah, well, yes. He was told, my understanding is he was told when he was first doing it, we didn't have any standards on it. I think the city's original position was, look, you're on your own here, but if we hear any complaints, you're going to have to stop. And so when the city received the one about a year ago, they contacted him, told him that he has to stop now because we have further complaints and issue. And so far as I knew, and we knew, I think, that he did. Once the amendment was passed, again, my understanding of what happened was that following this being passed, that Mr. Barr asked if he could put the ad out again. And we said, yeah, he can advertise it, but he still can't have anyone there renting it, you know, exercising his special land use. But he can't do that because he doesn't have the permit yet. For anyone to stay at church, he would have to go through this process, be approved, have all of the conditions in place, and then as long as he exercised the special land use permit and everyone followed all of the conditions that he required, and he followed the ordinance and everything else, and he would be permitted to do it, you know, either indefinitely or until he just decided he didn't want to do it anymore and it kind of sunsetted. So, and again, I don't know if it's, you know, I'm hearing from the neighbors that it's been occupied by guests since that time. I don't know. If that's the case, then that's an issue, I think, because that would pretty clearly to me be a violation of the ordinance. There was not a special land use permit valid for this. So far as I'm aware, you would have known that, and that's, you know, that's something else that we would have to you know, deal with probably outside of this particular application. If that's not the case, if it was just family and friends, I mean, you're allowed to have family and friends over, and sometimes family and friends can get loud and whatever. I mean, that's I think part of the discussion of the application is, you know, one is just what kind of impacts are we going to have from this activity, but perhaps more importantly is how is that different from what you could get just with a single family residence. I mean, I could have people over at my house at a party every weekend if I wanted to. I don't, but I could. You know, it's not common, but I could do that legally, and I wouldn't need a special use permit or anything else to do it. So I think part of your conversation here, and I'm not advocating either way, but part of your conversation should be, you know, the expectations for what's kind of typical for a residential neighborhood and what he can do just as a resident who would live there. Let's assume that he lives there all the time. You know, what he can do there just as a matter of being a resident of the city of Lowell, just like any of you guys could also do, versus, you know, the extra